My wife, 35F, of 10 years left me, 36M, after I discovered I had a son from a previous relationship. Wants to move with our kids. I apologize if there are any formatting issues. I messed up and put my son's age in and didn't have a proper throwaway account, so had to repost several times. I am sorry for any mistakes. I have been unable to sleep and really struggling. I feel emotionally drained. My wife, Amy, 35F, left me, 36M, after I was contacted by an ex and discovered I had a son. I tried to post his age, but my post gets removed, so I just want to clear up that he was born 3 years before I married my wife and there was absolutely no overlap or cheating in my wife and I's relationship. This happened a month ago and I requested a paternity test. Amy didn't say much while we waited for results, but agreed that if I was the father I needed to be in my son's life in every way possible. 2 weeks ago, the results came back that I am the father, and immediately Amy said she wanted a divorce and began packing her and our children's belongings. I was confused and asked her why, but she just cried and said she loved me. Amy and I have been married for 10 years. Our marriage has been pretty damn close to perfect. No serious arguments, same goals, we've traveled the world together, we have a beautiful home, rewarding careers, and fantastic children together. I am so heartbroken that she's thrown everything away. I feel like my life has been destroyed. I have no clue what to do. I have begged and pleaded for therapy and my wife refuses. She has started the divorce process. The next issue is custody of our children and terms of divorce. All 4 of our children are young, not even in school yet. She says if I agree to give her primary custody, she will let me have the house and will not want child support and will give me all of our savings so I can raise my son as his mother is struggling. She also agreed to pay for some home help for me. I am disabled and need help occasionally during flare-ups, which she usually provides. I told her I could afford it on my own, but she insists as she says she wants to help out since she won't be there. She will move across the country with our children but said she will bring them for at least 2 weeks every 2 months so I can have a relationship with them and will pay for me to fly out to see them whenever I want. I don't know what to do. I have no family to discuss this with because 2 of mine and Amy's children are adopted. And my parents and extended family think my biological son is more important than them, which is obviously untrue. It makes me feel horrible, but I don't even know my son. It feels like I'm losing everything for a person I don't know. And I know he's a child and I shouldn't feel that way. But all I ever wanted was my wife and kids. And while I will love my son and take care of him, I don't feel like he is my kid yet just because I haven't really had time to get to know him. A month ago, I wouldn't have recognized him if I saw him on the street. I feel so much guilt for feeling this way. Amy and I both are fairly well off, but she is more so than me. She offered to hire me a lawyer of my choosing if I don't agree with her terms. I told her again I could afford it, but she says she just wants to make sure I get a fair deal. But I just can't. I don't want to divorce or lose my children. I love my wife and children more than anything. I just don't understand her motives or why she is doing this. It feels like I have to pick my son or my wife and our shared kids. I keep trying to make sense of it in my mind. She will not tell me any reason for wanting to get divorced. She is even being incredibly nice to my son. His birthday had recently passed, and she got him a new game system. They haven't met, she said, say it was from myself and his siblings. She even told me what her nephew, same age as my son, is into so that I can get things my son might like. I don't even know what advice I'm looking for. It feels like my life has been completely ruined. I'm in therapy, but it doesn't seem to help. A month ago, my wife and I were planning on trying for another baby and picking our next vacation spot, and now I'm going to be divorced. How do I move on? How do I not unfairly resent my son when I know it's not his fault? I keep hoping there's a way to convince her to stay. But I don't even know what the problem really is. I'm hoping someone else has been through learning they have a child after 10+ years and know where to start, or what I can do to either move on or convince my wife that this doesn't have to happen. Any advice at all is appreciated though. TLDR, my wife is leaving me after I found out I have a child from a previous relationship. I risk losing custody of my children, and don't even know why she wants a divorce. Op on a comment to clarify a few things. I have not asked my wife to be a caregiver to me. I rarely have flare-ups bad enough that I need a caregiver maybe once a month, on a bad year, to a few times a year, and my wife was insistent our entire relationship on caring for me because she wanted to when I did need help. If she was burnt out of stress, there was always an option to hire help. She was the one who did not want home help. We divided our workload equally in our household and had a nanny that assisted us with much of the housework as well as regular cleaners, etc. As far as finances, while she earns more money than I do, we are both quite well off. We both work around the same number of hours and contribute equally to household bills. I believe if my wife was unhappy, she would have said something. We have never had any issues in our relationship, and any problems that arose she would communicate to me, and we would work together to solve. We always did check-ins in our relationship to make sure we were on the same page and could communicate in a healthy way. The more I hear stories for commenters, the more I believe she just did not want to be a step-parent. Second, while I have no way of proving that my wife was not cheating, I do not believe she was. We regularly used each other's phones, spent a majority of our time together, and she has never given me a reason to be suspicious. Another thing mentioned is that she is jealous because she is infertile. This is not the case. We were actually getting prepared to have another biological baby of our own before this happened. My wife has no plans to move immediately. Once we found out paternity and she said she wanted a divorce, she wanted to be closer to her family. They are located across the country. I do not believe there is another man or anything else, as her family would not approve of dating or remarriage since they are quite religious. From my understanding, she has no solid plans as of yet because she wants to make sure we have a custody agreement we are both happy with and we both believe is fair. I am in contact with a lawyer now. I told my wife I did not find what she wanted to be fair in terms of custody, and we are now trying to figure out how we could have court-mandated 50-50 long distance with her paying the travel fees and associated costs. I know I have been downvoted many times for believing my wife, and no doubt I probably am an idiot, and have received many messages calling her names and saying what a bad person she is. I know I sound ridiculous, but I still feel the urge to defend her. I do not feel like she is trying to steal my children or punish me. She has never been that kind of person. She is the kind of person who keeps packages of supplies in her car for homeless people she sees. The type of person who spends her free time trapping feral cats to get them neutered and seen by a vet. She is the one who gives a large sum of her salary to charity and spends hours every week volunteering. She is the type of person who made sure the children we fostered saw their biological family more than state-mandated supervised visits, and used her own time and resources to make it happen. She is genuinely the best mother I know. She has gone out of her way to explain to our children that while we may not live together anymore, I may have a new member in my family, that I will always be involved in their life and love them very much. And while it is hard for me to understand why she made this choice, it is also hard for me to believe she has become a person of malice. Many of your comments have said to ask for a trial separation and ask for court-mandated therapy. I have mentioned those things, and she is still refusing. I plan on asking my lawyer about it and hoping we can move forward, if nothing else, as healthy co-parents. It is incredibly heartbreaking to see all of the comments saying that they would leave if they were in her position as well. Although I can understand your point of view, it is incredibly hard to live through it. I love my wife and children more than anything, and it is soul-wrenching to lose them to something that is also a surprise for me. I appreciate all of your advice and will keep you updated as best as I can, although I do not expect to be able to update for some time, as I do not expect this divorce to be finalized for some time. Thank you all so much for sharing your experiences with me, listening to me vent, and giving advice. Op then makes several posts on the parenting subreddit. Post 1, Racism and Homophobia in Teenage Son. I recently received custody of my son, who is 13. Due to some circumstances out of my control, I was only recently able to be in his life. I have been taking trauma-informed parenting classes, and my entire family, including myself, is in therapy, both family and individual. My wife and I are also attending couples therapy. I have 4 other young children, not school-aged yet. When my son first arrived, he did not show any signs of homophobia or racism. However, I do understand my home is new to him, and my therapist explained it isn't uncommon for traumatized children to act perfect until they realize they are safe and then act out. I hate using that term, but it is easiest to explain that way. I am really at a loss because I cannot change his beliefs, and I am walking a thin line trying to help him overcome trauma and bond with him, but set firm boundaries as well and not let my other children be influenced by this. A few examples of issues we have had. 1. My wife and her friends came home after shopping. My younger son tried on my wife's new heels and sunglasses and was doing a fashion show for our guests, and my 13-year-old called him a stupid F-slur. It made everyone uncomfortable and they left shortly after. I asked why he said it, what he knew the word to mean, why he believed it was okay to say that, and set boundaries that he was not allowed to say that, and mentioned it to his therapist before his next appointment. 2. My wife and I recently had friends over for a pool day/barbecue. Many of our guests were of other ethnicities. My son had been very excited about this party as some of our guests had children his age and we had got them all Nerf guns. However, we noticed my son was not in the pool when the other kids were playing. We went and found my son and he was crying. We asked why he wasn't in the pool. He gave some vague answers but eventually had an outburst and began shouting where he said all of those N-words are in the pool, so he couldn't use it. There were 2 black couples in the lounge area of our pool. We had a call from the school where an Asian child asked my son and his friends if they wanted to hang out after school. My son said, "No, I'm afraid you'll eat our dog," and did the stereotypical eye pull to make it appear he has monolids. Several other remarks have been made to other children as well. The most recent incident was at a restaurant we attended. Our server introduced themselves with a masculine name but had feminine attire and makeup. Our son would not greet the server or speak to them. I took my son outside briefly and had the conversation that he will treat everyone with respect and address them with kindness. We came back in and he ordered his food. When the food came back, he did not eat. When the server came back, they asked if anything was wrong with his meal, and before my wife or I could speak, my son said, "Yes, a slur touched it." We apologized and made my son apologize as well. We left a tip that was more than our bill because the server handled it with a lot of grace. These issues started very quickly and came in rapid succession. We are hopeful that therapy will help, but these issues have only been happening for a short time and therapy takes time. We have been giving him age-appropriate books about systemic racism, homophobia, etc. We have also been watching informational videos about the harm these beliefs cause together as a family and talking about it, as well as watching/reading information about other cultures. I really don't feel comfortable with making him be around the groups he's prejudiced against because they do not deserve to be around anyone who does not respect them. I'm hoping for advice on what else we can be doing to help. Post 2 13-year-old stole laptop from nanny. Hello all. I was hoping for your advice on an appropriate response/discipline for my 13-year-old stealing from our nanny. I have not had custody long and I'm trying to set boundaries and consequences while also allowing him to adjust to our home and heal from some trauma in his childhood. Backstory: my son broke his computer because he was upset he was required to complete his homework before continuing a game he was playing. We said this was unacceptable and that he had to pay back a portion through home chores, $150. It was a MacBook Air and quite expensive, and that we could get him a refurbished one, and then upgrade once he's shown appropriate behavior. He is allowed to use a home computer to complete schoolwork and play games after he was finished with schoolwork until he earned the money. However, this computer is not allowed to be taken out of a certain room. This morning I received a call that my son was caught trying to sell a laptop at school. When we arrived, my wife immediately recognized the sticker on it as our nanny's. He was trying to sell it for $150. We called and verified that her laptop was missing. He is receiving in-school suspension and cannot participate in their free time, the time which he was trying to sell the computer. We do not know how to handle the situation at home. What do you think would be an appropriate punishment for this? We are trying to adjust to parenting a teenager. We only had young kids before receiving custody, and want to be fair but firm. When he gets home from school, we will make him return the computer and apologize, possibly a written apology. We plan on limiting his screen time further as well. We had considered not allowing him to go on our weekend outing. We usually go to an arcade, park, family-friendly cooking or painting class together as a family, but we do not want him to be left out, even if he is in trouble and want to spend time together as a family. Am I on the right track here? What else can I be doing? I wanted to add he is in therapy as well. We also have the computer, and the nanny agreed to let us keep it until he arrives home from school, as we want to make him give it back and apologize. Post 3. Did I make the right decision? My son spent a lot of his childhood in the care of his maternal grandmother. She was unable to continue to care for him due to some medical complications. I recently received custody of my son, and we told both my son and his maternal grandmother we would bring him to visit regularly, several states away. My son does have some behavioral issues because his grandmother was not able to enforce proper boundaries, and he had a rather difficult childhood before his grandma began taking care of him. Recently, my son has been helping my wife volunteer for community cat TNR and mentioned a community cat he treated like a pet and missed. We told him we would take a trip to see his grandmother and bring the cat back with us to receive veterinary care. Before leaving for this trip, we called my son's grandma and told her about what is happening in his life, what rules/boundaries we have set, what he has been wanting to talk about/interests, etc. When we arrived, it seems all of the progress we made went out the window. I am trying my best to give the highlights of his behavior because I don't want to ruin my relationship with my son, but feel these are big things that cannot be ignored. We tried to give them alone time to reconnect, but my son's grandmother did not want to care for him alone for an extended period of time, more than 2 hours, which I completely understand. We spoke to her about it before the trip so she wouldn't have to be the one saying no to something she was uncomfortable with, like staying the night. We would be the bad guy. He began cursing at me and my wife. He would have outbursts if he didn't get his way. He knocked over a living room display and cursed at his grandmother because she accidentally overbaked a dessert she was making for him, even though we had told him we ordered grocery delivery services with new ingredients. After they had spent some time alone one day, we went back to our hotel and his grandmother called and said her medical marijuana edibles were gone. We asked my son about it and he denied it. We asked him to empty out his travel bag for us and he did. We asked to check the bag and he agreed. In one of the zipper pockets we found the missing edibles. We had a brief discussion of how marijuana use before a certain age can be harmful, how it is illegal to have it, why he stole it, etc. We are not anti-marijuana at all and did not want to convey that message, but more so the health risks and the consequences of stealing. Later on, his grandmother mentioned wanting to take him to the local pool. My wife was sitting beside my son on the couch and said to ask me. The reason being is our therapist said no more pool for a bit after an incident where he shoved my younger child, who cannot swim, into the pool and did not show remorse. My wife was watching and no one was harmed, but my other child is too scared to go near the pool and cries in the bath now, etc. My son elbowed my wife in the side with enough force it left a bruise bigger than my hand. He said it wasn't fair because she knew what I would say. At that point, I told my son to gather his belongings because we would be heading home since he could not treat those around him with respect. My wife gathered the cat and we left. On our way back, we stopped at a gas station. We all went inside, but when I came back out to begin pumping gas, I realized my son was back in the car, had the window open and was trying to pull the cat out of the carrier by its tail, making it scream. When I told him to stop, he became angry. I removed the cat, secured him back in his carrier and put it in the front seat. I asked him why he was doing that, and he said it was because my wife was over-exaggerating what he did and caused him to lose time with his grandma and not go to the pool. My wife and I feel absolutely terrible he lost time with his grandmother. His grandmother called and expressed her disappointment as well and said we were being too harsh because he has issues from his childhood and needs our unconditional love. I do love him unconditionally, but I do not feel I can excuse these behaviors. Even my parents and extended family said I shouldn't have cut the visit short, and maybe a familiar face, grandmother, could help him get back on the right track and that his life changed quickly. There are bound to be outbursts. My son has been completely withdrawn, not eating, not engaging with us at all. It is clear he is dealing with depression. We have been going to several therapists, family, my son and individual, taking trauma-informed parenting classes / using a parenting coach, etc. We have followed their advice, and they continue to say it will take time to see progress. We got some differing opinions from these professionals, such as we did the right thing while others said old places tend to put us in old habits and he is trying to get back to the previous connection he had with his grandmother. My wife has been incredibly upset that he had to leave because of her and is clearly distraught that he seems so upset. She has mentioned she regrets saying anything about what he did. What would you all have done in this situation? Should we have stayed the full length of the trip to continue being with his grandmother? Post 4. 13-year-old resists showering. Tips. My 13-year-old son does not like to shower. We have taken him shopping for hygiene products, set hygiene rules for our household, and discussed why it is important to have proper hygiene. We asked if there was anything preventing him from taking a shower and he says he doesn't need one / doesn't smell. We provided him with educational materials on how to properly clean, and hormone changes that occur that make it necessary to clean more regularly because he did not feel comfortable discussing with me or any adult. When the odor continued to occur, we took him to the doctor who prescribed prescription-strength deodorant but said there was nothing wrong besides poor hygiene. We have tried to enforce better hygiene. We told him to shower, and he went in the bathroom for around 30 minutes. I went in after and the shower was dry. I commented and he said I was nagging him. I told him to leave his phone with me. I waited and heard the shower turn on. He stayed in for a while, and came out with wet hair. However, when I went in the bathroom, the bath mat was dry as was the towel that had been put on the rack. He still insists that he properly showered. The smell is very hard to mask. We have tried to put air fresheners in his room, but my wife does not like to use them, very concerned about potentially harmful chemicals. Even with the air fresheners, the smell is moving to the other rooms in our house and sticking to our belongings. Our nanny said that another child mentioned to my daughter that she smelled funny while out on a play date. Our home is regularly professionally cleaned and disinfected. We are sure his bed linens are cleaned every day and laundry is done every day as well. We clean porous surfaces in his room at least 3x a week as well, couch, bed cover, rug, but it never helps the odor. When he comes into a room, the smell follows him. I have tried taking away privileges, but he genuinely believes he does not smell and becomes offended. How do I solve this issue without violating his privacy? Any advice is appreciated. Thank you. Post 5. Just need to vent. I'm really struggling. My son 13M decided the appropriate response to my youngest daughter, not school-aged yet, telling on him for using the computer. He lost computer privileges, was to urinate in her bed? My wife went to put my daughter in bed and noticed it was wet. My daughter has only wet the bed once while sick, so we thought it was unusual and asked her if everything was okay / that she knows she can tell us. She denied it was her. We told her it was no big deal if she did, cleaned it up, and mentioned it to our nanny in case our daughter started acting sick. The nanny said she saw my son go into my daughter's room and asked him about it, and he said she had taken a toy of his and he was going to get it back. We sat my son down and straight up asked if he did it. He looked down and was struggling to hold back a smile. It was pretty clear by his behavior that he did. I love my child so much and he has been through so much in his short life. I will never stop trying to get him the help he needs, but there are times I feel like I am at the end of my rope. Despite my wife and I's best effort and being in every therapy imaginable, our family is struggling. While my wife is so nice to my son and spends a lot of time with him, my son and I spend more time together alone. My younger children are starting to avoid my son as his outbursts scare them. Therefore, they are starting to avoid me as well. They used to be excited to have my son join in on our activities, but now cry when he is around and cling to my wife. Every day is a new complaint from our household staff, the school, and parents in our neighborhood about what my son did that day. My wife is beyond stressed. We always act as a united front and rarely disagree or argue, but it is clear this is distressing her. We had an incident where my son pinched one of my younger children to the point a large bruise formed in the area. I heard her crying in the shower. When I asked what is wrong, she told me to leave because if I asked her again, she'd say something she couldn't take back. My wife is someone who never has anything bad to say about, well, anything. To hear that from her broke my heart. My wife wanted another child and so did I. I told her that would still happen even when I gained custody of my son. That feels like a lie now. Our couples therapist brought it up. I said I was still open to the possibility as my son got more stable. He asked her what she thought. She simply said, I just purchased locks for the outside of my kids' doors so I don't wake up 100 times a night worrying about what might happen to them. I think of what we have lost. Since gaining custody, we are no longer able to continue our volunteer work. We have both taken considerable time away from our jobs attending doctors/therapy appointments. We've both lost weight. My wife is experiencing hair loss. Our kids are having considerably more meltdowns. My wife has so much anxiety she vomits several times a day and has to take medication to sleep. We have become distant from our friends. I have a disability and flare-ups have become more and more common for me, going from a rare occurrence to me feeling symptoms near every day. And despite best efforts, we are experiencing a dead bedroom for the first time in our 10-year marriage. I look at my son and can see a great young man despite his challenges. I loved him instantly and wholeheartedly even after not knowing he existed until recently. However, when I look at how much my family has changed for the worse since his arrival, I can't help but to cry for the marriage and family I had before him. I feel so guilty for it. Post 6. 13-year-old keeps asking, who would you choose? Questions. My 13-year-old son came into my care earlier this year. He did not have a good home situation growing up and I was not involved in his life because I was not aware of his existence. The transition has been hard for all of us, to say the least. My household contains myself, my wife, our shared 4 children, my son, and some live-in employees. My son has began asking who would I/my wife and I choose to save during the event of an emergency. My son's therapist says to reassure him we will help him during an emergency and to make it clear he is a priority as much as our other kids. For example, he would ask if the house was on fire and you could only save me or wife, or me or sibling, who would you choose? I always respond with something such as, if that were to ever happen, we have a security system that would let the firefighters know of the fire and they would come to help. Until they got here, me, wife, and nanny would be working to get you all out because we love you all so much. We were initially worried it was anxiety speaking. We showed him the location of the fire extinguishers, and how to use them, the emergency ladders in the rooms on the upper floors of our home, and what to do in the event of an emergency. It extends into other situations too, on our family boat if it were to sink, a car accident, an intruder, etc. We've went over all of these scenarios with him. However, when I don't answer his question directly, he insists it's because we wouldn't choose him. He gets upset to the point he will cry and shut down for several hours. My family is putting pressure on me to choose him even once, like when he asks him versus my wife, but that makes me very uncomfortable. I love my wife very much, and while in reality the children in my house are a priority during an emergency for both of us, I would never say something like that in a hypothetical. It also goes against our therapist's recommendation. My parents and family are insisting I'm putting my wife's feelings above my son's well-being. Seeing my child so upset because he doesn't feel chosen makes me feel horrible. Any suggestions on how to handle this? Post 7. My son, 14M, shared inappropriate photos of my wife. I received custody of my son, who I was surprised to learn existed, early last year. To keep this short, I will just say that it has been an extremely hard year. Things have been up and down, but my wife and I have been making the best out of it. Every member of my family is in therapy. We tried a more extreme inpatient care at a highly rated mental health treatment facility after an incident, but his mental health degraded severely and his therapist pretty much said, "We told you not to do this," but I felt it was the only option to keep my family safe. A few days ago, I received a call from the parent of my son's friend. They found inappropriate photos of my wife on their child's phone. They were obviously incredibly upset and we were mortified. It was several photos, some completely undressed, her in the shower, some of her in swimwear, etc. All photos were obviously taken without her knowledge. We looked through my son's phone and looked at his history through our parental controls. We found nothing. I tore apart his room and found a phone from who knows where. These photos were sent to several of his friends who come to our house regularly. We read their conversations and they were disgusting enough that I had to quit reading and step outside. I am not proud to say this, but I felt enough anger towards my son I thought it would not be good for us to be under the same roof, and asked my single male friend to take him in for a night. He has since returned and I can barely stand to be around him. My son does not seem to care. I explained there are possible legal repercussions to this, that he sent porn for what it's worth to other minors, some even paid. I forced him to apologize to my wife and he was smug about it. We have tried so many medications, therapy, and providers. It feels like I have two separate families as my wife and children obviously have started keeping more distance the more erratic he becomes. I don't even know if I'm looking for advice. I worry my child is beyond help. What if this is not fixed? What am I even supposed to do? I feel so guilty. I look at my other children and I feel like my heart will burst of happiness. They and my wife are the absolute joy of my life. I do love my son and always treat him with kindness and love, except for what I described in this post, but I don't feel anything but sadness and anger when I look at him now. I know it's not fair to him, and that he has been through a lot, but there is something just off about him. Other people recognize it too, even those who have barely met him, and it makes me feel even more hopeless. Actual update to the original post. It has been over a year since my original post. Since then my life has completely changed. Some days it is very hard, but all things considered I am doing well. The biggest change is that my wife and I divorced. She moved with our shared children to the opposite coast to be near her family. We had an easy split, as we both agreed it was best for our family. I am very thankful for that, however it is difficult not to see all of my kids. The first month was the hardest, especially as we did not want to divorce and we had a hard time not treating each other like spouses, which delayed us healing. My son is doing much better now that is just the two of us. After our divorce, my son opened up about her in therapy. I now understand much more about his behavior. He is much happier now as an only child as well. He is really thriving with my attention. He is still struggling with his mental health, but his care team sees progress, as do I. My other kids have seemingly forgotten my existence, which hurts, but is also better than them being sad about the situation. I constantly try and call them, but at their age I get about 5 words in before they lose interest. My ex-wife and in-laws try and get them to stay on the phone and talk to me, but there is only so much connection you can have over the phone with kids their age. They seem happy, which is all I can ask for. I am at peace knowing that both my son and my younger kids have someone that loves them in their lives. I miss my family, but I feel I made the right choice for them and my son. After our divorce, I asked my ex-wife to lay it on the line, why did she want to leave before even meeting my son? She had written me pretty consistent letters from the day we found out, until the day we divorced. She gave them to me once our divorce was finished. I read over them several times. She gave several reasons for wanting to split. She felt she had chosen me to have a family with, and I had already had a family. If she had wanted strangers in her life, she would have married a man with kids the first time. She specifically chose someone without kids, and felt she made a mistake as now other people would have some control over our lives and a stranger would be in our home. She loved our life, marriage, and knew it was all about to change because of my past decisions. She also said she knew that kids coming out of situation like his were likely to have trauma. She underlined many times that while I was a good person, she knew I'd throw our family under the bus to make up for something I had no control over. I wrote to her to tell her she was right and that I was sorry things turned out how they did. Overall, I am happy. I don't regret my decisions. My son is thriving with me and my other kids have a great mother and maternal family. I hope my son continues to improve, and I selfishly hope that as time passes and he gets older and more stable, I will be able to reconnect with my wife and be involved with my other kids. I appreciate everyone who reached out with advice. TLDR, my wife and I divorced, and her and our shared kids moved. My son is doing much better.